My plotting approach was pretty much throw it all to the wall until it sticks and get there somehow. And I roughly was embracing a 3-act structure with, really it's a 5-act structure. An inciting incident, it's somewhere at, say, 15 to 20% of the way into the book. And then three major acts, and then an act 5, which is your ending, your denouement. And so that's how I looked at it. And I did a lot of work on these in the past. I would print all my pages out in 2-page, book format, tape them to the floor, go through with highlighters and look continuity issues and see if I was dividing the acts up correctly. But in dividing the acts up correctly, what I wasn't thinking about was the midpoint of the book. And the midpoint of the book is the midpoint of the middle act. And I was thinking about beginning and ends of acts and how do you get between those. And so when my first draft came in, they said, we really need a midpoint. And I'm like, talk to me about this midpoint. So they had me read a book called Into the Woods. And I'm going to forget who wrote it, even though I printed a couple of pages out from it.
John York.
Thank you, John York. So I read Into the Woods. And for the most part, I was going, yeah, this is what I do, until I got to the part about midpoint, which basically was, this is the point at which you move from that which you didn't know towards having some kind of explosion of knowledge or a change point that leads to, at the end, your acceptance of what you've discovered, your reawakening, your end point. And that's your big moment of key discovery is right there at between 49 and 51%. Hit it right on the nose, Pamela. And I went through, and sure enough, for a crime thriller, I did not have that huge key discovery, which in a crime thriller, one would expect also to come with some whiz bang, right? Something at risk. Okay. So you want a lot to be at risk so that the protagonist is pushed forward into the second half of the book, resolving whatever it is they've now discovered and can't avoid resolving. And I'd really always thought of it more as an inciting incident, and then you have an act, an act, an act, an act, and an ending. And that whiz bang in the middle was missing. So I did that. The first structural edit was just a bitch. I mean, it was just awful. And then the second was good. And by the time we got to Her Last Cry, the third book in the series, my editor gave it a kiss and a hug and said, by George, I think you've got it. And now I'm writing book 4. And literally last night, that's what I was doing, was looking at what I'd written so far, realizing I'd crusted what I intend to be the midpoint, and that I needed to revisit it before I moved on, because my key discovery was there, but I didn't have enough whiz bang. And so anyway, I went back and that's what I did this morning, was worked on my midpoint, because to me now I really think of the book in 2 halves, as the biggest structure. And then I obviously also think of it on all those little micro pieces as well.
I realized I want to loop back with the same question for genre, because I realized I kind of lost the thread of the data-driven thing. But talking about the structure, did you ever get a sense of what data your publisher or editor had that was leading them to push you so forcefully toward this structural approach?
No, I really don't know from a data perspective what they have that pushes them towards that point, other than that is their predominant theory of how you structure books, and that they sell a lot of books, and that when you master that they feel like that it pushes their readers through the book and into, whether it's buy through, if they're buying the books, or read through if it's in Kindle Unlimited. So my suspicion was, and it's a question I didn't ask them actually, was that their data came from series writing and moving on to the next book. Because, somebody can buy your book and they could stop at 47% because it wasn't satisfying, or they can stop at 75% because you didn't show them a compelling enough reason to be pushed from this key discovery towards, the inevitable ending.